Hello, it's Chloe Bruce, the guest journalist again. I've mentioned my diagnosis of schizophrenia and have discussed it and certain issues related at length in previous videos. And in, I think, the first two I filmed, I discussed libel in my medical notes, in particular my psychiatric medical notes, and completely preposterous notions about me. And I've discussed how they made false allegations that I defecated in my sink and ate my own excrement, and that I lived in Berlin, or sort of spent all this time in Berlin, when it simply isn't true. I've been there for 2 nights when I was 20, and it's hardly spending time in Berlin. I tried to explain that it was Vienna, not Berlin, and that they're completely separate countries, Austria versus Germany, and they still insisted. No matter how much I said it hadn't happened, they kept repeating, in effect, off to Berlin. They kept saying she was sort of spending time in Berlin. They didn't know how to take no for an answer. It's in every single piece of paper for some reason. And I've asked them what the big deal is anyway, why it's sunny Spain for some and cruel Berlin for others. And they would just say, well, a professional told us. And they've got all these secret people up their sleeve who I think are probably someone I could take apart, because I know my own travel movements and it's easy to establish them through passport control, historical evidence about my travel movements. Anyway, there are various preposterous allegations, and clearly this type of behaviour would be, since they said I've always been paranoid, according to my family, I've always been paranoid, this type of behaviour would be completely incompatible with a successful career, which I've had, thankfully, and I'm very grateful for it. I worked extremely hard, but I'm aware I was blessed with certain opportunities arising for me. I've lived abroad mainly for my career, Moscow, Vienna, Greece, Kefalonia in Greece, and where else? Just those 3 countries. I worked abroad. Yes, I worked briefly in Israel, also in Tel Aviv. And yes, I forgot that. I was just there for a few months, and the same for Greece. I spent lots of time working in Moscow and longer in Vienna. So I just want to actually make a point here today about libel in notes. I want to actually set the record straight, because all they ever do is go, maybe she defecated, maybe she didn't. And it's just disgusting to talk about a woman that way. And when I complained to pals, they eventually confessed it was the plumber who said, a local plumber. And I'm going to, therefore, I'll come back to that issue soon. And I don't know why they have to think he's in charge of my psychiatric notes, but everything in it's the plumber's opinion. And they haven't even bothered saying that. They've made up some great authority in the sky has said it or something. Anyway, I'm just going to say this little confession. And I think you'll see what I mean. I'll leave you to judge for yourselves. And it's actually, I'm not actually trying to be difficult. I'm just making a point that they may as well put this in my notes rather than speculating all the time and wasting everyone's hospital fuel bills and tax payments. Right, so, since I'm a Catholic, it's against any of my principles to be untruthful. So I've decided to make a public confession. I'll leave you, as I said earlier, to judge for yourselves. Bear in mind, there is a high death rate and untimely death associated with mental health difficulties, which is why this point is important. I have never really been a journalist. I'll just show you something. This evidence of my journalism is clearly in my imagination. It must be a hallucination, because I'm obviously not the type to be a journalist. As they say, I'm too stress prone and everything like that. So that's my press pass. I won't show the inside because it's got some private details. But you can check with the National Union of Journalists that I was registered there. And of course, this is just imaginary. So they'll tell you, oh no, she's obviously psychotic or something. She's imagining this whole career. She's the type that defecates in her kitchen sink. We know that type. Anyway, so I've never really been a journalist or held an NUJ press pass like this one that I'm imagining. It's fantasy that I actually met the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Vienna. And this is something I've imagined too. My press pass to enter that, it's in German. But you can see Vladimir is spelt with a W in the German language, and they've put my company at the time, Economist Intelligence Unit, but they've put Intel. For some reason they spelt it wrong. I'm not sure if I did a typo in my application to attend. But anyway, I don't know why they're saying he's Intel, but anyway, that's an interesting point. But anyway, so that's my other lie. I've met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Vienna. I'm very sorry that I've imagined all this. Right, so I've never written for Jane's, that's a military publication, or edited for the Economist Intelligence Unit, even though you can see it here, all in my imagination, because I'm the type who just never managed to cope. I'm so stressed and all those things. I wasn't particularly stressed by Putin, actually, contrary to what people might think. It was just a press conference like any other I've been to, but it was obviously it's an important press conference because he just started his presidency, and it was interesting to see how it would pan out. It was very useful for me to meet him and to gauge some of the psychology involved, but I can't say it was one of my traumatic experiences, which I said I will discuss in other videos. So I've never, as I said, I've never written for Jane's. I've never been an editor for the Economist Intelligence Unit. I left school without any qualifications owing to my innate squalor, natural tendency to shun others, and disorganised thoughts. These are all actually the hallmarks of future schizophrenia that they've identified with elaborate grants, I presume, for saying these kind of empirical facts. Right, so I shun others, I've got disorganised thoughts, I would only think bad thoughts of others, and was so severely paranoid that I was unemployable. My system of thought, delusional thought, was so great I started to believe my own lie that I was a Foreign Office secondment into the OSCE in Vienna. This was a 2-week secondment for a relatively minor role working in the press attaché in OSCE Vienna. Again, you can ring up and hear how ludicrously delusional I am. I'll get round to that later. You can ring up the OSCE and check. I don't know if they'll tell you, but anyway, that's where I was. Anyway, so I started to lead my own lie, which I just said, the Foreign Office. My most hurtful lie, of course, to my family and all these distressed psychiatrists because of my hideous stress, my stress rubbing off on them, is that I was sectioned by MI6 after visiting their headquarters, or strictly speaking, they called in the police to remove me and they carried me out. I was so paranoid. This is, yes, of course, this is imaginary too, or fake or something. I don't know, I've showed it in my earlier video, my discussion about MI6. I don't know where this little mark comes from. I thought it was a physics mark, but no, it might be my biro pen making a little line like that. Anyway, by accident, I had pen on my fingers and sort of did that. Anyway, so that's my most hurtful lie, all devastated by my lie. I was so paranoid as a child that my whole family lives in extreme distress, and apparently my high-pitched voice makes everyone anxious. They literally get so anxious hearing my high-pitched voice that they can't live and things like that. I didn't win 3 postgraduate scholarships at all. No, that's a fantasy. Academics have to try not to gag when I tell them of my unrealistic expectations and to this low academic potential. It's just horrifying for everyone. I haven't really published in peer-reviewed journals. And others, of course, the true writers, at least according to themselves. Some people, when they're up against the journalists, they're the true writer. Well, do it then. And anyway, the SEO, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, would not have wanted me anyway, since apparently I have bilingual German and Russian, and I confess that this could not have been because of hard work, extremely hard work on my part, living in a Russian-English dictionary and a German grammar book. But I'm, of course, born into a German-Jewish family, according to the surname and status side of my mother. And this is quite unfortunate. If you want to talk about genuine paranoia, they said my name was Vrubel from my mother's side. And I don't know why. I understood. I looked it up and I've heard of the name, but it's a German-Russian name, apparently, associated with both those countries. So they're seeking out my true origins. I don't know why they had to be preoccupied by my race anyway. There's no racial situation that would ever make anyone behave that way. It couldn't possibly. I know it sounds stating the obvious to normal people, but it's simply not true that this could possibly be related to Berlin or anything like that. Anyway, I do also know the unfortunate thing, if you think of the fact that I'm a natural gas journalist specialising in Russian natural gas, it's a bit unfortunate that the word, the way they put it, means in ruble in Russian. And if you know what's going on in gas and payments in ruble, that's obviously a difficult situation. I don't know why they had to put it, but anyway, they shouldn't actually botch it. I don't know why, having sort of made a big deal about wanting to talk to my mother, they didn't even know her name, and I do know a Freudian slip or two there. Anyway, all this, of course, all this devastating behaviour of mine was the build-up to my defecation in my kitchen sink, and this would have been, of course, otherwise how would they have known? This was after 3 police officers, several council workers and a local plumber, the local plumber they've cited, all barged into my flat. And I want to say here that, you know, they would have been in front of all these people, and I'm hoping there's body cam footage on the police so that they can set, you know, this little rumour aside. Anyway, I want to apply for the body cam footage, but I actually don't know how to approach the police at this point. I do trust some, not others, because when I actually had to kick one of the officers in self-defence when he said he was a Nazi, and to be more precise, they all barged into my flat because there was a plumbing issue that was related to a washing machine overflowing the sink. And I did warn the council about this as soon as I moved into my flat, and they didn't bother replying. And then they sort of blamed the tenant for their botched services. And I'll say more about this housing issue and homelessness in another video. It's quite interesting what it's like to be in the housing system of Britain. Anyway, I said, "Are you a Nazi?" Because he started to say, "Don't this, do that." And then he grabbed my wrists. And I said, "Are you a Nazi?" And he said, "Yes." So I kicked him, and that's the only thing I could do in self-defense. You have to understand that I am just, or was certainly, of childbearing age. I cannot actually risk any kind of, if you consider some of the press about officers who can even go as far as killing women, I can't actually risk, I'd actually rather risk prison than have a baby in my womb in those circumstances, if you think about the rape that could have occurred with all these people, especially as there are several men in my toilet at that point. I don't know why they all had to traipse into my loo, but anyway, there's nothing particularly remarkable in that. I've never even had a lavatory blockage. There's nothing that would predispose me to actually using the kitchen sink in that manner. I do like to drink healthy water and wash my dishes in a normal manner. Anyway, so I'll continue with my confession. Yes, and then he says, then it was at this point I must have eaten my own excrement right there in front of them all. I don't know really why they didn't stop me, or sort of, I was actually semi-dressed, they all busted in when I was naked, and I managed just to get my bathrobe on. Anyway, that's not very nice, kicking someone when you're just in a bathrobe, as you can imagine. I had bruises from these police officers because they dug the handcuffs into me and said I was going to prison, and they haven't actually said why. I think I have the right to know why they said you're going to prison. Anyway, they've made some kind of decision to put me in a hospital instead. They have to actually explain to me why they've done that. I cannot for the life of me understand. I'm going to explain some of the circumstances leading up to them barging in, but I can say I didn't destroy my flat or cause any damage at all. It was all pre-existing from the council. It was the washing machine installer who mentioned this fault, and it couldn't possibly mean, unless I tampered with plumbing behind the walls, as far as I can possibly tell. I don't know what causes it, but anyway, it seems to be something that's not very easy to fix, but can be. I'll leave it for genuine plumbers to decide. Anyway, all this in front of these vast numbers of people traipsing around my flat, looking in my fridge for maybe things like Valium that might be stored there. I don't know why they had to do that, but anyway, I was one woman against 9 people. And this was all during the COVID lockdown. I don't know why they thought they could pass COVID to me. I don't know why the police just didn't come in and chat to me when I was on my own. But anyway, they made that decision, and they have to live with it. They have to live with themselves. I don't have to live with them. And that's a fact. I'm just hoping that people can speak out a bit better, because it's not just used. A lot of people might be finding this difficult, how to actually overcome fear of the police. But just know that there's lots of good ones out there. I know they work very hard to keep the community safe, and I do think that's true. And it's good to have, just take a deep breath, as far as I'm concerned, say just report it. And it's very difficult. I was flashed at, and I didn't want to report it because I was frightened they would just say I was mad and put me in hospital. And there was a dog involved, and I was worried about this poor dog. So I reported it anonymously to Crime Stoppers Anonymous, and I just find sometimes it's easier to do it that way. And I was able to locate the location, and hopefully they'll be able to see something on CCTV evidence. It was very unpleasant, this poor dog, being used to defend him while he perpetrated this disgusting act. Anyway, so, yes, I've got a note here, I can't read my writing. Anyway, what I like to say, this is the conduct which I would have had all my life, with this severe paranoia, a terribly difficult person, completely unemployable, no one wants them, they're utterly antisocial, they offer help like a carer, you just don't want it. The reason I don't want a carer is because I'm nearly OCD about my property and keeping it clean, and I'm nearly OCD about this allegation that I've eaten my own excrement. Anyone would be. I actually at one point had lost 1/3 of my body weight, and I was still just about in a healthy range. But I can't say I did anything to kickstart my appetite, except I just took deep breaths and I thought, don't let them win. And I thought, well, I can lose weight if I want to. I could go on hunger strike until they admit their error. I just said, don't let them win. And I love dance. I do dance-inspired workouts to keep in shape and to keep my weight down, because I'm on something that might elevate my weight a bit naturally. Some of the drugs do that, and I have to work very hard to keep my cholesterol in check as such. And I just do that. I just think, don't let them win. Whatever happens, don't let them win, because they just play on people's fear all the time. Anyway, so owing to all this sort of notes, instead of saying, oh, she may have defecated, yes, she definitely defecated in her kitchen sink, can't you just put in my note she's a psychopath? Because quite frankly, and with schizophrenia, if necessary, because quite frankly, what they're describing is the very obvious conclusion that if someone goes around defecating all over the place in an antisocial manner and gets other people to clear it up, then I can't say anything but this: they must be a clinical psychopath. No one in the right mind, and I might have been ill, let's say, but at least I could have then admitted my fault. I can't admit to something that I didn't do. Anyway, I'm going to say this now just so they can put it on my notes and just be satisfied about how bad a person I am. And instead of all this quasi-scientific speculation, doctors just should say out loud, she's a psychopath and of that nature, rather than these little racial hints they put in. And I've talked about that in my other video about SMI, which is a weird way of putting a person's health. Anyway, thanks to my YouTube viewers. I have every faith that you're wonderful people, and I have a few viewers, and I'm very pleased. Thank you.